Penn State's going to need a lot of help from its new wide receivers for next season if they want to be successful. But there's one other important component to the success of the passing attack. Oh, yeah, Drew Allar.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. My name is Zach Seyko, and it's the celebrity guest week here as we're rounding out January. And up next is Eric Ohlson, who's a great colleague, a great friend, someone that we've actually done hockey broadcasts together. You're still in the hockey field. I've kind of moved on to radio, this video podcasting platform. But now back together, Eric Ohlson, who is the color commentator for Penn State men's hockey. You can hear his calls on the local radio if you're in the State College area, or of course on Go PSU Sports. Eric, thanks so much for joining me. And of course, you also do play-by-play when your partner in crime, Brian Tripp, is not available when he's on football duty.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for having me, Zach. It's been a lot of fun doing hockey. It's hard to believe it's my fifth season now with the team, but you nailed it everywhere you can listen to us. And yeah, now I start to get to do some more play-by-play opportunities with the opportunities that Brian Tripp has now with athletics. So that's been a lot of fun. And then, of course, doing color in my normal role.
Yeah, so I want people to understand how the talent that you bring over into this guest spot here and your knowledge, because we are going to talk some Penn State men's hockey in the final segment, get a lowdown on the team and an update, because this is a really good team this year. They're solidified in the top 10, definitely could be considered a top 5 team in some places. They've beaten top teams, and they got Michigan here, and you'll be out there calling that series with Brian Tripp in Ann Arbor. We're going to talk some football to open up, the off-season goals, and then some expectations for the 2023 season. Let's begin with this, Eric. When they won the Rose Bowl, it was a great feeling. They beat Utah 35-21. From your perspective then, where do you think everything shifted immediately after they got that win? Just kind of what was the feeling you took in for the Penn State team?
Well, I mean, that was such a convincing performance that it just felt like that was the culmination point, right? I mean, that was what they were building to all season long. We saw progression game by game and a few stumbles here and there, but that really felt like everything came together at the right time. And to see Sean Clifford go out like that in his final game, everything he's done for the community, for the program, that was great to see. And him just be able to have that moment coming off the field, and then after the game, just standing out on the field, kind of embracing that and soaking that all in one last time. But I think after that game ends, now the shift becomes, okay, what can we really be next year? And, you almost don't want to jump to that right away because you want to enjoy the moment, right? Just take that all in. But you look at, and there were going to be some questions, right, after the game ended, like, okay, who's going to continue to come back? Who's going to end up leaving? Or is anybody going to transfer? And once those questions really started to be answered, then I think it really shifted to, okay, how good can we really be next year? That internal conversation. So I think it just seems like the sky's the limit. So that Rose Bowl felt like a great culmination point. Everything they built upon from start to finish that season with the guys they had. It would have been great to see them make the playoff. Would have been great to see them win the Big Ten championship, of course, but to go to the Rose Bowl and have that type of performance and get the win. I mean, they had a great performance against USC offensively. It was one of the best games we've seen. It was just a great shootout back and forth, but defensively to shut down Utah the way they did and then score points, be able to dominate with the ball on the ground, the performance that Clifford had, that was my biggest takeaway, is that, hey, this is a team and a program that can continue to get better as the season progresses. You want to be playing your best football in December or January. And I think that's what they were able to show.
You want to be playing football, period.
Right.
when it comes to college. Eric, I mean, wide receiver seemed like it was falling apart. Parker Washington has the season-ending injury and ends up ultimately opting for the draft, which was personally my biggest surprise. Then Mitchell Tinsley, there were some debates around his eligibility. Apparently, Penn State could have filed for an extra year if they wanted to, but since he had played from JUCO to Western Kentucky and then all the way through, there might have been some things they could have done. But you're losing your top two contributors at the pass catcher, and then nobody's joining in from the transfer portal, and you're sitting here wondering, okay, what's going on? Because Drew Allar's here. The offensive line is completely intact. Like, there are little to no question marks. Why would you not want to come in with a prestigious program like Penn State and be a number one, or compete, at least compete for the number one or number two wide receiver spot? Taylor Stubblefield gets filed. Marcus Haggins comes in. And now they have Dante, Cephas, and Malik McClain all of a sudden, all of this going later. Did they do enough at wide receiver to make you sit here and say that this is going to be a lethal passing attack when they need to go to it?
I think that's really the big question, right? Did they do enough? And I don't know that we can answer that right now. Hopefully when spring ball starts and the blue-white game happens, we'll kind of have more of an answer. But you're right. For me, that was the big question too. Once Parker said he was going to the draft, and Tinsley's gone, everyone knew they would have to look to the portal, right? Mm-hmm. To bring something in. And, Cephas, everything I've read, everybody's saying, he went into the MAC as, a guy no one really knows about and kind of undersized, but then proved that he can be a guy. And you bring that type of talent in. He's a burner. I think he's going to be a great downfield threat. And then Malik McClain, like you said, coming in from Florida State, I think people like his size and what he can bring. I think it's two really good additions. And then you hope that Keandre Lambert-Smith, the breakout that he seemed to have in the Rose Bowl, can he build upon that and bring that into next season? So, and now with the new hire at wide receiver coach, does that change the dynamic at all? I think it's still questions left to be answered. And then you tie that into what Drew Allar's progress is going to be like. Can he gel with these guys in spring ball? Is that enough time? Is it going to have to transition into fall ball and summer practice and really up to the beginning of the season? And what's his progression going to be like in terms of development as well? I think it was great to see him get a lot of time during the season, coming in and getting reps, especially in Big Ten games. But there's a big difference between coming in for some series here and there and being the guy from start to finish in a game against some of these defenses. So I think there's a lot for him to continue to build upon. And now he'll have another full off season and full summer to really digest that playbook and what Mike Yurcich wants to do. So I think there's still some questions left to be answered, but I think Theo Johnson, looking at the tight end position, Theo Johnson coming back is great. Obviously Brenton Strange is off to the draft, but I think Theo coming back will help the wide receiver group a little bit, because this offense, it goes when you have tight ends that can be a factor, and then wide receivers that can get open and make an impact as well. You need both of those to mesh.
He's Eric Ohlson, color commentator for Penn State men's hockey with Brian Tripp. They are the team that covers the team when they go out, and you can hear that on Go PSU Sports. Eric's joining me here on Locked On Nittany Lions to talk about Penn State football and the ice hockey team in our final segment. Let's continue this slot with Penn State football, Eric, as the expectations for the team, how spring ball is going to look, what you think you'll see from the team and what you want to see from them, and then what the 2023 season ultimately holds. That is coming up next. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about our brand new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the number one sports book in America, and that's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make sports betting fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a bigger payout with the same game parlay. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 wager bet to get $150 in free bets. That's right, $150 in free bets, win or lose. That's it, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen today. For your second listen today, you got to check out the brand new show, and that's Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, you get to hear from big name experts, insiders, coaches, players, and more. That is Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Zach Seyko. Eric Ohlson, special guest joining me today. He is the color commentator for Penn State men's hockey in the broadcast booth with Brian Tripp. And Eric, we're going to talk Penn State men's hockey in our closing segment, but back to football. This is a team that's going to have a lot of expectations, but they still got to check off some boxes and some to-dos. Spring practices and winter workouts are going to be, that's where you get better. Every coach says it. The off season is when you get better, where you get better. How can Penn State get better in the spring season when we get to the blue and white game when it comes around in April? What do you want to see? What are you looking forward to seeing to say, I feel comfortable with this team and any lofty expectations that we'll have for the fall?
Well, I think number one, what we were just talking about, right, with the wide receiver group and what they can do offensively, I think that's something I'm looking forward to seeing most, because that's where the big questions lie. Do we see anything in the blue-white game that suggests that, or do they kind of keep things under wraps a little bit? I don't know, and hold that off to summer practice and fall ball. I'm curious to see that. But in terms of the rest of the development, I'm excited to see what they can do as a group offensively. I think having most of the offensive line come back is great, especially Olu. It's huge to have him coming back. That was, to me, the most important position group last season. As great as the running backs were with Singleton and Allen, as great as the defense was as the season went along, none of that happens offensively without the offensive line performance. You don't have these great running performances. Sean Clifford doesn't have time to throw the ball if that unit can't solidify itself. And they did. And we know how much maligned it was the past few years and how much frustration there was within the program and outside of the program, that it just wasn't happening the way people wanted it to. And now we finally saw what looked like, hey, okay, now this can be the future. Seems like they figured it out. If that can continue in the next season, that's going to be huge. I think that's still the biggest key. If the offensive line can be a major factor, allow yourself to run the ball, give your quarterback time and space to make all the reads that you need to in a Mike Yurcich offense, things will be successful. So I'm interested to see, can they continue to build upon that in spring ball? How can they develop the offense? I really liked Yurcich's progression as the season went on. I thought he got better at calling plays, got better at dissecting defenses and what can make you as an offensive coordinator, you want to put your guys in a position to be successful with the right scheme, with the right play. And you also need to have confidence that they can make checks if they need to. They've gone away from this offense as a program, but the check with me, you get to the line, automatically look over to the sideline, then you get your call and you go from there. Mm-hmm. Now it seems like the quarterbacks have more control over what, if they audible, if they need to, or are we just sticking with the play? So I want to see, more development offensively with the playbook. And again, that might be something that's kept under wraps a bit. I don't expect us to see a whole lot in the blue-white game. But I'm looking for that at the beginning of the season. And as far as, expectations for next year, I think the sky's the limit if everything comes together. Like I said, the offensive line is going to need to continue to be strong. If that happens, they're going to be able to run the ball because you have two of the best running backs in the nation, if not the best. And then what's Drew Allar going to be able to do with another full off-season program? How comfortable will he feel? And what the wide receiver group is going to be like. If offensively they can get all that to mesh, there's no reason they can't put up points against anyone in the Big Ten. Defensively, I think they're in a great position with the guys they get brought back. And maybe the most important is Manny Diaz returning. Everyone knows he'd love to be a head coach again at some point. He said that, but he also said he's not going to leave if it's not the right situation. So for him to come back for another year, I think is huge. I loved what the defense did as the season went on, especially with that culmination point being the Rose Bowl. And I think they're in a really good position to build upon that as well next year.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Everything that you brought up that the offense is still going to have to go maybe through a little bit of a learning curve, because you just went from a guy who was your 4-year starter. I mean, he conducted the offense, and he had so many offensive coordinators, and
Yeah.
it's about time that this Penn State team gets a little consistency. I mean, Brent Pry was that anchor defensively. You never really had to question, okay, who was coming in, what was going out. On offense, I mean, it was just a little bit of a revolving door there, and at the wide receiver position coach. You mentioned the offensive line, and I don't, I would agree that they were a focal point. It starts up front. Every coach will say that, because it truly does. If your quarterback doesn't have time, he's gonna collapse under pressure, right? But I think the running backs, Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen, Eric, were the huge difference makers. And it was nothing against Kevon Lee and Noah Cain, but they just didn't have it in the 2021 season. And that not having that running game, it just, yes, the offensive line got better. Juice Scruggs was back with the team. They were able to get Hunter Noorzad. Landon Tangwall gets a little older. Caden Wallace gets more experience. Olu becomes what he becomes. They didn't have that the year before. I get that. But I feel like Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen made it a lot easier for all of them to look better, right? Whereas Kane and Lee just couldn't do that. Singleton's the home run, and Lee tried to be that. And Noah Cain just lost what he had. I wish him all the best. I don't want to see anyone not succeed that went to Penn State. Same thing with Kevon Lee here. But I think those two individuals, and I'm going to be looking for them to take that next step, because the first thing I think of is not Saquon Barkley and Miles Sanders, because there wasn't that relationship between the two. Saquon Barkley was a featured back, and Miles Sanders wasn't even really a compliment. It was Saquon Barkley 90% of the time, and then whenever the man just needed a breather. I think of Reggie Bush and Lendell White between these two, and Singleton's Bush and Lendell White is Kaytron Allen, where, the home run hitting, and I think they can be better. I think they can both be Heisman contenders. I think eventually they'll both be first-round picks, and they're only sophomores. Like, we don't have them for one more season at Penn State. They got 2 more years to get even better. So, and then what's after them? So what I'm getting at is, everyone's going to be focused on, okay, can Drew Allar lead the offense? Can the receivers be able to get some form of a relationship with him? Dante Cephas isn't coming in till over the summer. But what do you think about the idea that the backfield, and I don't like speaking this into existence, Eric, but the backfield might be one injury away from having serious concerns? I mean, I get Kevon Lee wanting to go start somewhere else. He showed that he's a capable Division I running back. It's just not at Penn State anymore. And it's going to be at some select places that just need a guy like LSU needed a Noah Cain. Because I don't think he'll say, okay, go to Florida State or whatever and be the number 1 guy, or go to Alabama and be the number 1 guy. That's going to be a little too tough for Kevon Lee, but he's also not a MAC running back either. Like, I could see him landing at, I'm trying to think of one off the top, like Maryland. Maryland could use Kevon Lee's services, for example. And I'm not saying he's going to go there, but do they need a running back in the portal? How closely are you paying attention to that group when all the eyes are going to be on the passing attack and Drew Allar?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point in that the depth has taken a bit of a hit, and injuries happen. So it's something I hadn't really thought about, but I'm sure they're thinking about it within the program. I think you have 2 guys right now that could be every down backs. And I think that's a huge benefit to have. I mean, Singleton, what he can do when he gets a little bit of space and hit that hole is incredible. But I think we also saw him get better as a pass protector as the season went on. And then Kaytron Allen kind of brings more of that thunder. And he's fast too. I think his speed got better as the season went on. He can hit a hole and make you pay. And it'll also make you pay physically. So I think, again, these guys did all that. They were only freshmen. Right? That's kind of hard to believe. They were only freshmen. So I think now as sophomores, exactly. I think now as true sophomores, they're going to continue to develop physically and learn more of the game, be more comfortable in the offense. I think I'm pretty confident that either one of them could be a 3-down back if it was needed. If one of them, God forbid, happens to get an injury at any point during the year, I think they feel pretty good about where they're at. But boy, what a great duo to have, right? And you look at what a team like Ohio State has had over the years. always felt like they had a great stable of running backs where, you put one in on first and second down, and then here comes a guy on third down. He can make you pay too. And it never really felt like Penn State had that. I think they do now. Like you said, Saquon, he was the guy. They didn't have that rotation. Now you can rotate both Singleton and Allen in, and each one brings something a little bit different from the other, but they also have some similarities. Good luck defending that for a full 60 minutes.
And what I like about having them switch on and off is that they're not as prone to injury. And it's not that, if they were a 3-down back, that like, oh, that's, they're going to get banged up. They're going to get hurt. They're going to get tired real easily. No. That's not it. But it's like, just kind of think about like using 2 cars. When you're not using one, you're going to preserve the gas in one when you're using the other. So when Singleton and Allen take the field, they're able to get that rest, and they'll be able to have that strength, and they'll be smarter, and they'll be more rested as games go on. So this, I am concerned about not having a third option. Tank Smith has shown that he is capable, but there is a difference. And I've said this over multiple shows, Eric, that Kayvon Lee and Tank Smith are 2 different running backs when it comes to it in college football. So Eric, real quickly before we get into men's hockey, your specialty, but of course, football just as well as anyone here. This team, the expectations, at least for me, are college football playoff or Big Ten title. I think it's going to come down to Penn State and Michigan in Beaver Stadium. That's going to be the deciding factor. Ohio State, I think, will take a slight step back. I don't know that Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, they have a quarterback battle right now. I thought it was going to be full steam ahead with Kyle McCord, and now we're hearing that Devin Brown might have an inside track. So with all that being said, for Penn State, if they don't make the college football playoff, first, do you have them making it there at this point in time? And then second, if they don't make it, is it a disappointing season?
It's tough. It's honestly tough to say because I think there's still so many unknowns. I'll qualify it and say, if everything reaches the potential that we see, if Allar comes in and plays great ball, if everything clicks offensively, if they stay healthy, the wide receiver group is strong, defensively they continue to build, I think the potential, the ceiling is playoff without a doubt. If all of that comes together, it's playoff or bust in my opinion. But again, it's a 12-game season and a lot of things can happen. But I would say if not everything clicks, I think missing the playoff isn't a huge disappointment. Okay. If they can still get a New Year's Six game. I think that's the one thing that could make everything a little bit better. This year the Rose Bowl felt like a great reward for what they did during the season. The way the structure is right now, before the playoff expands, it can feel like playoff or bust for a lot of teams, but having that reward of a New Year's Six can still be a great benefit. So I think there's still a lot of questions left to answer to be able to say, is it playoff or bust? I think the potential is there for it absolutely to be a playoff. But like you said, it's going to come down to that Michigan game. And I'm not writing Ohio State off yet. They're too good of a program to write off. They have a great ability to just plug and play guys. Quarterback will be the big question, but I think they still have so many offensive weapons that it might not make a difference. But it's always going to come down to those 2 games, Ohio State and Michigan. And of course, you have to take care of business with Michigan State. Anything can happen in that game. So the division is tough, and that doesn't make life easy. And I think it's definitely going to come down to those 2 games to determine what your fate is going to be with the playoff.
It is Locked On Nittany Lions special guest Eric Ohlson from the Penn State men's hockey broadcast team. He does color commentary alongside Brian Tripp. I am Zach Seyko. We are going to be talking that top 10 team next, where they stand currently in the season, what the expectations are for that team, because they want to make the Frozen Four. They want to make the playoff. They want to be one of those teams that finally breaks through that glass ceiling for Penn State athletics. And we're going to discuss that all next. Welcome back to Locked On Nittany Lions. I am Zach Seyko, your host as always, joined by a very special guest, and that is Eric Ohlson, color commentator for Penn State men's hockey. And Eric, you got a trip here, at the time of when this episode is going to be posted. You might be, for some people who are listening or watching, you'll be wheels up, ready to go to Ann Arbor, but that's going to be Friday and Saturday against number 7 Michigan. And Penn State's got a tough test here. Number 6 in most rankings. But Eric, you'll have what's the updated standings for where Penn State stands right now? I've seen number 6, but what is I know the they have the official ranking. Where do they stand right now in terms of the tournament itself?
Yeah, so right now, the polls you see, the rankings you see, they have them at 6, and it's those rankings are essentially irrelevant. College hockey is like what football used to be in the BCS system. College hockey does have a committee, but the committee, when it comes to selecting for the NCAA tournament, always looks at what's called the Pairwise. And the Pairwise is a mathematical system that ranks every team in college hockey. So again, back to what the BCS was, there's a formula that factors in results, home and away, and non-conference opponent versus conference opponent, everything like that, and it ranks teams. So when it comes to the Pairwise, Penn State is 3rd in the country right now, which is a phenomenal spot to be in. And Minnesota is right up there at number 1 ahead of them. Then you have other Big Ten teams like Michigan and Ohio State in the top 10. Michigan State is just outside. Notre Dame is on the bubble right now, and Wisconsin is a bit further back. The Big Ten is so unbelievably strong for hockey this year that there's the potential for 6 teams to make the NCAA tournament. That might not happen. I think we're probably realistically more looking at 5. It really depends on what Michigan State and Notre Dame can do. But in that ranking, Penn State is 3rd. That's the one that matters the most right now. Those rankings and standings continue to update when results come in. And then by the end of the weekend on a Sunday or Monday, you can really look and see, okay, where is the team at after that weekend? But they're in 3rd right now. That's the one that matters most because 16 teams make the NCAA tournament, and the committee will look at who is 1 through 16. Of course, your conference tournament winners get an automatic bid, and then there's at-larges after that.
Yeah, and Penn State, why they're at number 3, for some people that don't know, I mean, they've beaten a number 1 Michigan team. They've beaten a number 1 Minnesota team on the road at the time. They've beaten ranked Michigan State teams. They've beaten ranked Ohio State teams. They just, fresh off of not only a win beating at Notre Dame in South Bend the first time, but then getting the win in that whiteout atmosphere, which was absolutely incredible, and then beating RIT. So this is a team here, Eric. I sit here and say, because I talked about this on the radio a lot when ESPN Radio State College was still around, and I talked about this with Steve and with Brian. This was a team that was expected to finish 6th in the Big Ten. And now they're 3rd in the country, according to the ranking system that matters the most for the tournament itself. And I'm sitting here laughing because I knew it, and I'm not even near the expertise that you and Brian have for this team, since you followed them so closely. But I sat back and said, with everything that they were returning, with Liam Souliere coming back, that this was going to be a very good team and they were going to get into the NCAA tournament. So was that the same thing for you? How have they all come together? What has been the key component for this team to have this kind of success?
Yeah, that preseason stuff, maybe a little bit of bulletin board material, but I can tell you the program doesn't pay attention to that stuff. They never have. Doesn't matter. One of the polls was a coach's poll. They had him at 6. I saw some writers' polls that had him finishing last behind Wisconsin. We definitely got a good chuckle out of that one because, look, like you said, we knew it. Looking at who was coming back, and I think one of the questions was, okay, Liam Souliere, he took over the net at the end of the season. He had this great run in the Big Ten tournament against Ohio State and played really well against Minnesota in the Big Ten semifinal. Could he come back now being the number 1 and continue to play like that? I think that was probably the biggest question, and he answered that pretty quickly in the season with the way he started out. And then you solidify your forward group by bringing in 2 of the most experienced players in college hockey in Tora Linden and Ashton Calder. Not only are they 2 of the more experienced guys, they're 2 of the oldest guys in college hockey at 24 and 25. They've played a ton of games. And, Linden comes in as a center. They needed some center depth. He was brought in to be a really good center ice guy, winning faceoffs and playing a 200-foot hockey game, meaning he's good up offensively, but also really good coming back to the neutral zone and defending. He can kill penalties as well. He has been a phenomenal addition, and Ashton Calder has been as well offensively. He's putting the puck in the net. The most important thing with these two guys is they fit the culture really well. When Penn State is looking at bringing in transfers, it's culture first. They're not going to bring in a guy for the sake of bringing in a guy. He has to be able to fit the culture of that room because they rely on their culture so much as a program. That's the foundation that they build upon. And in some of the years previously when they've had struggles, they've been very honest in saying, the culture isn't where we need it to be right now. We've had to focus too much on that outside of the rink. And this year, a guy said from the very beginning, I have no issues with the culture. I'm not worried about it at all. This is the first time in a few years where we really haven't had to think about it. Right from preseason camp, we've been able to just focus on things on the ice instead of trying to work and build the culture off the ice. So those two guys have been great additions. The players they brought back, you got a freshman class last year that played a lot of big minutes, a lot of games. They're coming in now as sophomores. They're contributing. So these are guys like Danny Geniev and Ben Schoen. Geniev is really coming along offensively right now. So some of that youth that was coming back, and then what Liam Soulier has been able to do from the beginning of the season up to this point right now has been absolutely incredible. So they are where they're at because of what Soulier's done on the back end, what they've done defensively as a team. Offensively, are they putting in 5-6 goals a game? No, but they're also keeping the puck out of their net and they're getting timely goals. So it's something that they haven't really been able to do the past couple of years. Everything is kind of building up to this great culmination point right now.
So, Eric, Penn State's got Michigan with this important series. And again, that's going to be over the course of Friday and Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time when the puck drops for both games. And Penn State, really needs to continue to solidify the resume because people are questioning, well, they're not getting the sweeps. They're splitting these series. So what do they ultimately, they need at least a win, but do they need that series sweep of a team like Michigan on the road to really solidify that they are one of the best in the country?
I think a sweep would definitely help kind of quiet that conversation a little bit. Mm-hmm. But people need to know that sweeping in the Big Ten is a really, really hard thing to do. I mean, these games night in and night out are battles for 60 minutes. If you sweep a team in the Big Ten, you played an incredible series because it is just not easy to do because these teams know each other so well. You're not fooling anybody when you get on the ice against each other. And it really comes down to who can play their game the best for 60 minutes. A lot of times that's what decides it. So going into Michigan is a really tough thing for Penn State to do. They only have one win in Yost Ice Arena since 2014, and that came in the 1920 season. That team that had the ability to go to the Frozen Four, ultimately everything was cut short because of when the pandemic hit. But that was their first win in Michigan since 2014. It is not an easy thing to do to go into Yost and get a victory. So for Penn State to do that this series, they're going to have to play their game for 60 minutes. And you hear that a lot from the coaching staff, from players. It's just, one of those hockey phrases, hey, we just got to play our game. We got to play our game. But it's true. It's not about what the opponent does. It's about what you do. That's what the game of hockey is all about. So for Penn State, that's being responsible in their own end of the ice defensively, getting pucks out quickly. They want to get it in the attacking zone as fast as they can and go to work offensively, winning some battles. Of course, everybody knows they want to shoot the puck and shoot the puck a lot. Mm-hmm. But you need to have the puck in order to do that. So it's about puck retrieval when you get into the offensive zone, getting it back to the point, moving it around, and getting a lot of shots to the net. If they can do that, they can have success offensively against Michigan. They do need to stay out of the box, though. They've had some penalty troubles over the past few weekends, which is why some of those results haven't been there, and I think people are noticing that a little bit. The other key in terms of special teams for me is power play. Penn State's 0 for their last 15 power play opportunities against Michigan. Now, that includes the 2 games earlier this year in Pagula and the 2 games at Michigan last year. Those were 2 1-goal losses for Penn State. They played some of their best hockey in Yost Ice Arena last year and just fell short in both games. But I think they have the unit offensively to go into that arena this weekend and get it done. You got to be able to stay out of the box, though, because Michigan has offensive talent up and down its lineup. A guy like Luke Hughes on defense is absolutely incredible. Adam Fantilli, he's a forward. He's expected to be a top 2 pick in the draft coming up this year. So they have some guys you got to worry about. But Penn State also has some guys you got to worry about, like Kevin Wall and Connor McEachran. Mentioned the 2 transfers in Tor Linden and Ashton Calder. So they have some guys that Michigan has to worry about as well.
And then, Eric, when we sit here today, do you think this Penn State team makes the NCAA tournament?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's all but guaranteed at this point. When you look at where they are in the pairwise at this point in the season, it would take something pretty extraordinary, I think, for them not to make the tournament. They're basically 1 or 2 wins away, especially because you have Michigan coming up, then Ohio State, a bye week, Minnesota, and then Wisconsin. So 3 of your 4 remaining series are against teams in the top 10 in the pairwise. If you can get a couple wins there, it essentially locks them in for the NCAA tournament, which they'll go to the regional in Allentown this year, and that's expected to be some great Penn State crowds.
Home ice advantage. I like that.
Yeah.
Eric Ohlson, the color commentator for Penn State men's hockey. If you want to listen to some of these upcoming series, especially Michigan, because it's going to be such a back and forth battle, that's going to be over in Ann Arbor. So you're going to want the audio call. You're going to want the home favorite audio call with he and Brian Tripp. And that you can find that over at Go PSU Sports for all of those and on the local radio in the State College area. Eric, thanks so much for your time. And I can't wait to have you back on to update us on the team as they get closer to the Big Ten tournament and then ultimately the NCAA tournament, where we both expect them to be.
Yeah, of course, Zach. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to coming back on. It's a really exciting time to be a Penn State hockey fan, that's for sure.
Thanks again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out the brand new show, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one spot. Plus, you get to hear from big name experts, insiders, players, and coaches, all at Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Remember to subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube for more Penn State content. It was awesome to get the Penn State men's hockey perspective from Eric today, but we're going to have more on football. Nias Hawkins will be joining us for a brand new episode. We're going to talk about some breakout players as well for the 2023 season. Keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions for all that and more.